Hey, what's up everybody? So I wasn't planning on making a video today since I'm still technically on break. However, the official trailer for the series finale of The Owl House was released the other week, and to be honest, it's only now just hit me just how quickly season 3 has gone by. Like, yeah, I knew that this season would go by pretty fast despite having big gaps between episodes, but now that we're only 2 days away from the release of Watching and Dreaming, I'm suddenly starting to feel really emotional about the fact that the show's gonna be over in just 2 days. Anyway, moving on from the sappy stuff, let's take a look at this trailer for Watching and Dreaming. So the trailer begins with a shot of what looks like Amity's hand drawing out a light glyph on the ground, most likely using her tears since the surface of the ground is made of tiles, so obviously you wouldn't be able to draw anything on it unless you use pen or some other form of liquid like water or tears. And it also looks as if she's been turned into a puppet, as there are now lines going across her knuckles, just like the people that got turned into puppets in For the Future had. So maybe she quickly drew that glyph as a last resort to try and escape, whilst the collector was in the middle of turning her into a puppet. The next shot shows Luce holding up a Polaroid photo of her, Eda King and Hootie posing outside the Owl House, which was probably taken sometime during season 1, and whilst those two shots play out, we hear Eda ask,
"Where do you think magic comes from?"
And we then hear Luce say, "From the heart." And as she says that, it then shows the giant beating heart that's inside of Belos's throne room. And for some reason, Luce is sitting on Belos's throne, which is something that I was not at all expecting to see. It then shows Luce walking across one of the giant hallways in the Emperor's castle, and then shows King looking pretty freaked out about something, but doesn't show us what. Whilst those two shots play out, we hear Eda again. This time she says,
"You need to choose yourself."
Now the next shot is pretty interesting. Eda is in harpy mode standing next to King. However, the environment around them is all green and spiky, and there are these glowing blue eyes that are in clusters moving around. So maybe Belos is going to possess the body of the Titan at some point, which may be why the environment around King and Eda in that shot is all green, as the Boiling Isles archipelago itself is made up of the body of the Titan. So Belos possessing the Titan's body would change the entire environment of the Isles, hence all the green and clusters of glowing blue eyes. It then shows Harpy Eda flying somewhere, and it looks as if she's maybe had to leave someone or something important behind, or that something or someone is chasing after her and trying to trap her, as she looks down at something whilst looking pretty worried. And whilst those two shots play out, we hear Eda once again. This time she says the iconic,
"Us weirdos have to stick together."
We then see Luce's hand reaching out towards the portal, so we'll most definitely get to see where she ends up staying. Since this is the very last episode, I think that she'll probably end up staying part-time in the human realm and part-time in the demon realm, although if you want to hear more about why I think that will happen, I go over it in more detail in this video that I made a few months ago where I talked about some of my season 3 theories. Link to it will be in the description. Anyway, it then shows us that Lilith's been turned into a puppet, so she probably won't get that much screen time this episode, although I'm hoping that we'll at least get a couple more Hootie and Lilith moments. We then finally get a more close-up shot of Luce walking through the Emperor's castle, and she's wearing the same outfit that Belos used to wear when he was Emperor, and Stringbean is sort of perched around her shoulders. I'm not sure why she's wearing what Belos used to wear, or why she's just walking around Belos's old castle, but my guess is that it has something to do with one of the games that the collector wants to play. Maybe he's gonna trap them all in their worst nightmares, and in order to win the game, they're all gonna have to find a way to escape from said nightmares, which will be pretty interesting to see if that does end up being the case, especially for Luce, as we know that she's been non-stop blaming herself and beating herself up for showing Belos the light glyph, and then in thanks to them, she started comparing herself to him during that class. Like, she was feeling so much guilt and shame that it was to the point where it was heavily implied that she was suicidal. So it would make sense that her worst nightmare / worst fear would be becoming like Belos, which may explain why she's suddenly dressed like him and walking around his old castle. But also, when looking at those previous two shots of King and Eda, if them all getting trapped in their worst nightmares ends up happening, the shot of King looking freaked out by something could have something to do with those Titan trappers trying to hunt him down, and then the shot of Eda flying away from something could have something to do with her trying to escape from the Coven guards. It then shows Luce peering over the bridge that leads to the castle. She sees something shocking, and it reveals that Boscha, Matt, Principal Bump and Morton have all been petrified, which in Luce's nightmare would probably further convince her that she was the one that caused them all to get petrified, and that everything, despite the others' reassurance that it's not, is all her fault. Next, we see possessed Rain holding this glowing star, and we hear Belos say, "Perhaps this will be easier than I thought," which I think visually symbolizes that at some point during the episode, Belos will get to a point where he has everyone where he wants them. The stars are definitely something to do with the collector, since they all suddenly appeared on the Boiling Isles after he took over. So Belos saying, "Perhaps this will be easier than I thought," whilst using Rain's body to hold the star between their fingers, is kind kind of like a visual metaphor for the saying wrapped around my finger, which is an idiom that means to have complete control over someone or a group of people, because Belos already has the Collector where he wants him, because near the end of For the Future we saw Belos manipulate the Collector into thinking that everyone hates him and that they all also want to eradicate him for good. So whilst the Collector takes out his anger on Luz and the others, they'll all be distracted for a while, thus then giving Belos time to do whatever he's planning to do, and so that will probably be where he has everyone where he wants them. Next it shows Rain being engulfed by the bottom half of Gu Belos's body, and what's even sadder is that you see them go to whistle in order to escape, but they end up being unsuccessful. We then see that they're both in the throne room, and we see the top half of Gu Belos crawling in the direction of the giant beating heart, which further implies that Belos is going to try and possess the body of the Titan, and the reason why Rain's there is likely due to Belos using their body to get him close to the giant heart, so that he can then use it to possess the body of the Titan. There's then a cool close-up shot of King, Luz and Ida all suddenly opening their eyes, with some transparent text overlaid on top that says watching and dreaming, and I think these individual shots of them all opening their eyes are likely each of them waking up inside their nightmare dreamscapes. Also, if you pause the scene really quickly, just as they're all about to open their eyes, King is surrounded by darkness, and you can better see the shadow of prison bars cast across Ida's face, since there's no text overlay that's covering the shot, and the shot of Luz looks pretty much the same. We then get a shot of Luz, King and Ida standing next to what looks like a giant stone sword going into the ground, and then this pink light from above starts shining on them, which when showcased in an aerial shot forms a star shape, and it kind of looks like they're all standing on a giant checkerboard. But then on the left there seems to be this giant cup and ball, so maybe they're all going to have to go through different game trials that the Collector sets up, and then the final trial will be all of them having to escape from their worst nightmares, which for Luz will most likely be the hardest trial, since she's been really struggling with her identity and has been convinced that the Day of Unity was her fault. It then shows the Collector hovering above the three of them, and there's this blue galaxy-esque magic swirling around him, which is soon followed by a quick close-up shot of his face, and then his shadow is shown looming over Luz, King and Ida. And whilst those 5 shots play out, we hear the Collector say,
"Let me show you some of my favorite games."
We then see the Collector in this Pac-Man-like form chasing Luz down this giant walled pathway, so it looks as if one of the game trials is going to be similar to the game Pac-Man. Not really sure how the Collector knows about that game, but maybe at some point while Luz was away, King told him about it, as he may have been introduced to Pac-Man by Luz. And whilst those 2 shots play out, we hear Willow say,
"You have to wake up."
so further implying that the theme of sleep and dreams are likely going to play a role in this episode at some point. In the next shot, we see that the Collector has made himself giant and has trapped King, Luz and Ida inside of separate orbs, Ida in the yellow one, Luz in the pinkish purple one, and King in the blue one, and he probably made sure that they were trapped in separate orbs so that they wouldn't work together to try and escape from him. I also noticed that the colour of each orb sort of matches with the powers within each one of them, or that are connected to each one of them. Like Luz's orb is a pinkish purple colour because of her connection to Stringbean. Ida's colour is similar to the colour of the potions that she takes to keep her owl curse at bay, and King's colour matches one of the colours from the rings that his Sonic Shout power forms, which is the glowing outer blue colour they have. Behind the Collector there are loads of cracked orbs, which could be old ones that previous Collectors used to trap people, because in For the Future there's a scene where King is walking down the hallway in the Collector's archive house, and decorating the walls are murals of the past Collectors and Titans, and the mural that's on the front left depicts 3 Collectors messing with this giant pink orb that looks pretty similar to the giant orbs that are behind the Collector when he's trapped Luz, Ida and King, but just without all the cracks. And then behind them is a smaller Collector that looks as if he's running towards them, which could be the current Collector when he was even younger, because despite being a little kid, he's still like thousands of years old. And whilst that shot plays out, we then hear Luz say, "How?" Next we see Amity holding Luz's hand. She then says to her, "You turn on the light," and when she takes away her hand, it shows a glowing light glyph. Amity and Ghost also seem to be tied up, but from what Amity says here, I think that if Luz does end up being trapped inside her worst nightmare, then maybe the only way for her to escape it is to find the light, which I think could mean a few things. Maybe she's going to have to use the light glyph as a way to guide her towards something that can help her escape from her nightmare, or metaphorically, it could mean that she's going to have to somehow try and find the light that's within the darkness in order to be able to escape. Although the name Luz means light in Spanish, so maybe that light she has to find is somewhere within herself, but because of everything she's been through, especially with Belos causing her so much grief, the light that she had within herself slowly got dimmer and dimmer until it got fully extinguished, which would have been around the time Thanks to Them happened, because we saw her just wanting to completely give up and having suicidal ideation. However, before all of that stuff with Belos happened, she was always really enthusiastic and optimistic about things and wanted to help others in the best way she could, which is what she ended up doing, so much so that she sometimes ended up sacrificing her own wants and needs in order to help the people around her, and that in itself represents the light that she had within herself. So if the latter scenario ends up being the case, then I think at some point during her nightmare, she's gonna have to dig deep and try to find a little bit of compassion for herself, which metaphorically speaking will translate as her finding the light within herself and then reigniting it so that it can help guide her out of her nightmare. The next shot shows the Hex Squad all tied up and they're all wearing their old outfits, which I believe represents a time that each of them changed throughout the show. Willow was wearing the outfit that she wore in the episode Any Sport in a Storm, which was when she became more confident in herself. Hunter is wearing the outfit that he wore in the episode Hunting Palisman, which was when he started to question if what Belos was getting him to do was right, and was also when Flapjack became his palisman. Amity is wearing the outfit that she wore quite often throughout season 2, which was when she went through quite a few major changes and over time grew to be a better person as a result of those changes. And Gus is wearing the outfit that he wore in the episode Enchanting Gromfrite. Now, although his character development wasn't explicitly focused on during that episode, over time throughout season 1, Gus definitely grew more confident in himself, similar to Willow's character development, and his talk with King during Grom subtly highlighted that, as he was then able to help King overcome his stage fright. And also leading up to that, we see that Gus is naturally pretty good at narrating and is also pretty confident up on stage. Anyway, now something else that I noticed about this scene is that the Hex Squad all look as if they're under some sort of spell that enables the Collector to control them, but at the same time doesn't quite turn them into full puppets because their expressions look sort of lifeless, like their eyes don't really look right. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but something about all of their expressions just look a bit off to me. They then all suddenly get pulled up towards the sky and then just vanish, which was maybe the Collector teleporting them all to another game. Also, a giant statue of Flapjack can be seen in the background as the shot pans upwards, like... However, going back to the shot where Amity says to Luce, "You turn on the light," you see that her eyes are normal, which means that at some point the Hex Squad managed to gain back control of themselves for a brief moment before then losing the control again and getting teleported away by the Collector. So maybe the Collector noticed that they regained control of themselves, and so that's why he decided to remove them from Luce's nightmare and teleport them away, maybe to another game. We then get this shot of Gus carrying one of the Hexside students that were turned into a puppet over his shoulder, which I presume takes place earlier on in the episode, since he's wearing what he wore in the previous 2 episodes. Behind him are all these statues, which could be all the people that the Collector turned into puppets, and so this could just be where he stores them all when he's not using them. So Gus and the others most likely snuck in and are attempting to get as many puppets as they can safely away from the Collector. Next we see Luce flying on her palisman staff down one of the hallways in the Emperor's castle. She then jumps off her staff and starts running, so I think it's likely that something is chasing after her. The next shot shows Luce and her group standing inside the skull of the Titan, which is where they all were when For the Future ended. So this will probably be where the finale picks back up. They're all looking up at something, which is probably the Collector doing some terraforming high above them in preparation for one of his games. We then get this shot of Harpy Ida breaking out through the doors of the Conformatorium Tower and then flying off, and I think this shot will go with the shot of her flying off that was shown earlier on in the trailer, which means that Ida's worst nightmare will likely be something to do with her being locked away in the Conformatorium and being chased down by the Coven guards. And whilst this shot plays out, we hear Luce say,
Let's end this.
It then shows Luce activating a light glyph. I think she likely activates this glyph not long after Amity tells her, "You turn on the light." A short Disney promo clip then pops up for a few seconds and just says when and what time the finale will be premiering, and we hear Luce say over the promo,
You know this can't last forever.
almost as if she was saying that to us the viewers, since this is the season finale, and obviously a lot of us Owl House fans are really sad that the show is going to be ending very very soon, but also know that the show can't last forever. Next we see the Hex Squad all charging towards something, most likely towards Luce, since there's a boot that looks like Belos's in the bottom left corner, and I think that the Collector is still controlling them all here, since all of their eyes and expressions still have that off look about them. So I think that the Collector is going to be able to control certain elements of Luce, King and Ida's dreams, and he's then going to use that power to his advantage in order to make each of their nightmares even worse than they'd usually be. And since this is Luce's nightmare, I think that the Collector is going to force her to fight her friends, so she'll have to be the antagonist whilst the Collector gets to play the good guys. We've seen how much Luce has been blaming herself and beating herself up for showing Belos the light glyph, so I think her friends attacking her could represent how she thinks her friends should have all reacted when she told them about what happened with Belos. Like I said in another video, then when Luce goes to hug Amity, she suddenly starts resonating with a scene from A Good Witch Azula, Azura movie that's been playing in the background. Azura is going up against this character called Lucy and then angrily says, "How could you do it, villainous Lucy? How could you betray your friends?" Lucy then says, "It was for the greater good," to which Azura responds, "We'll never forgive you." And as this scene in the movie plays out, Lucy's guilt and want to keep what she did a secret gets further reinforced. That scene in the movie tells us more about what Lucy honestly and currently thinks of herself. She sees herself as a villain, a betrayer, and because of that, she thinks that her friends should hate her for what she did. However, deep down, she doesn't really think that her friends would all hate her for it, but she currently hates herself for what she did, so she's pretty much projecting that onto them by believing that they should all hate her for what she did. Her nightmare will just amplify all of these fears, doubts, and projections that she has. Next, we see Gus running towards something whilst holding several glyphs, so I definitely think that glyphs are going to play a pretty important role in this episode. Now, the next shot that we get is pretty interesting. We see Ida and King going to charge at something, presumably Belos and not the Collector, since Belos is the one that's caused the most suffering and knows full well just how much he's harmed people over the years, whereas the Collector is just a little kid who's a bit misguided and just wants genuine connections with people. King then jumps onto Ida, who's in full harpy mode, and she then goes to take off into the air. Both their eyes and tongues are the same colour as the orbs that the Collector trapped them in, King's being blue and Ida's being yellow. They also both seem to be crying, so maybe they both saw Belos do something really bad to one of the people that they really care about, probably Luce, Rain or Lilith, and so because of that, they then both start feeling really overwhelmed with anger and bitterness towards Belos, which then causes them both to unlock some hidden abilities that they both didn't realise they had, and that's why both of their eyes and tongues start glowing. Although King looks as if he's grown a bit bigger and he looks more fluffy, so maybe at some point we'll see him have a growth spurt. We then see this shot of Willow using glyph magic, which is pretty cool. So it definitely seems that glyphs are going to be more important than ever in this episode, because we've now seen Gus, Amity and Willow all use glyph magic. And so my theory is that glyph magic is going to be what's used to stop the Collector, because we've seen that regular magic doesn't work against the Collector. However, the last time that we saw Lilith, she discovered that Titan magic is able to cancel out the Collectors, which is why the Collector's predecessors decided to wipe out all of the Titans. Now, magic itself is a gift from the Boiling Isles, or more specifically, it's a gift from the Titan, since the Boiling Isles archipelago is literally made from the decaying remains of a fallen Titan. So when we've seen Luce activate glyphs throughout the show, those glyphs were all activated and powered by the Titan, which means that glyph magic itself is technically Titan magic. Therefore, everyone using glyph magic rather than their own magic against the Collector would be more effective in the long run, although they'll probably also use their regular magic to help as well. As for Belos, I think that at some point the Collector is going to finally learn that Belos is the true villain, as the others will probably just use the glyph magic to undo what he did to the Boiling Isles and to just temporarily contain him, so that they'll be able to talk to him about what he's doing and how it's causing everyone more harm than good without having him freak out and then use his Collector powers against them all, since the glyph magic will probably just temporarily cancel out and deflect his magic whenever he tries to use it against them all. And then I think after he learns that Belos tricked him again, he'll then likely team up with the others and then they'll all work together to defeat Belos. Now, the final shot of the trailer shows Ida, King and Luce all crying and hugging each other, which is just super wholesome, and whilst this shot plays out, we hear Luce say,
Us weirdos have to stick together.
And since this line has been said twice in this trailer, I think the Us Weirdos Have to Stick Together message is going to play a pretty important role throughout this episode. And as we know, Luce chose to stay in the demon realm because she felt like an outcast back at home. And then for King and Ida, they too had a lot of people ostracizing them, so we're both in a sort of similar situation to Luce. So the whole Us Weirdos message being more at the front and center of the finale would make a lot of sense, seeing as one of the main reasons that Luce even chose to stay in the demon realm in the first place was because she didn't fit in at home and saw that Ida and King were also seen as outcasts, so then ended up asking if she could stay with them, and then from there the two of them eventually became her found family. And so that's sort of why I think the Us Weirdos message is going to likely play an important role in this episode. And I honestly can't wait to see King and Ida finally reunite with Luce. It'll probably be a really emotional moment, but also hopefully we'll get to see Camilla meeting Ida and King for the first time as well. But speaking of Camilla, she only appeared once during this trailer, which was when everyone was standing inside the skull of the Titan, so that makes me pretty worried that something bad might happen to her. However, fingers crossed that she'll be alright. So that's been a few of my last minute thoughts and theories for watching and dreaming after watching through the trailer a few times, and I honestly can't wait for the finale, but at the same time I don't want it to happen, because once the finale finishes airing, the show will have officially ended, which honestly just sucks, especially knowing that we could have had 20 more episodes had Disney not decided to shorten season 3. Anyway, thanks for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I also have a Discord server in the works, so look out for that. But last of all, if you did enjoy this video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you'd like the video and subscribe. That's pretty much it. Goodbye.